You guys know perfectly well that I love when map creators try different ways to add something unique to their maps. For example, you're running through a museum and suddenly, in the middle of the room, there's a massive skeleton of a Dinosaur. Of course, you'll remember that. Or here's a spawn point that looks like an actual submarine. That's definitely something you'll remember for a long time. There are countless ways to make a map special, from choosing a memorable location like building a skyscraper to adding custom character models in the game. My favorite thing, and what I often pay attention to, is the custom fauna that creators add to their maps. In regular Counter-Strike, we have chickens, fish, sometimes birds flying by, and that's about it. That's why it's so nice to see when map creators add, for example, a crocodile to their maps. So, as you can guess, in this video, I'll tell you about the animals you can find in the Red Book of CS. Get ready, because you really won't believe what I discovered. I went through every version of Counter-Strike, and I can say that the creators of these versions either had some seriously twisted imaginations or were just making the game under the influence of something. Alright, let's get started. Let's begin with the official content in CS1.6. On the map Italy, the first chicken in history made its appearance. But back then, this little guy couldn't do anything, literally. It didn't make sounds, had just one animation, and even had a funny hole in its butt. When it died, it just made a generic sound effect. Over time, the variety of fauna in the CS world grew, and instead of chickens, we got goldfish, which you could find on maps like Inferno and Militia. The goldfish in CS Source, unlike the chickens from 1.6, were no longer just part of the scenery, but full-fledged creatures with behaviors that were almost like those in real life. But all of this was just one model of the chicken. Over time, other birds joined the game, including crows and even seagulls and pigeons, which you can spot either flying over maps or chilling in specific locations. The fish were also updated. Now they react to gunfire, footsteps, and the sounds of grenades, decoys, flashbangs, molotovs, and interestingly enough, bomb explosions. All the creatures I've mentioned so far don't make it into our Counter-Strike Red Book because they're part of the official content, meaning anyone who downloads the game can see them. In Counter-Strike, there's a map called The Port. What's interesting about it is that it appears in all three major versions of the series. In CS 1.6, you could spot sharks in the water at the port. These sharks weren't tied to any game mechanic that killed players or anything like that. They were purely decorative elements on the map. However, in CS Source, the shark disappeared, leaving the waters of the port completely empty. That was the case until the map was ported to this version of CS, and suddenly the waters were filled with fish, starfish, and even the same shark. But now it was bigger, scarier, and no longer just a crappy static object, but a fully fledged 3D model. You can even notice it moving its tail, although the movement is completely out of proportion to its size. But hey, it's there, right? But guess what? I actually figured out why the shark acts like such a weirdo. It's because it's technically just a fish. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Dude, a shark is a fish. What's so weird about that? True, but I'm talking about the fish, that tiny little guy. They literally took its model, scaled it up, slapped on a different texture, and left the same animations. You have no idea how much time it took me to find this map with the shark. What's interesting is that on the map creator's website, there's a screenshot showing a spot where you can supposedly see a dolphin, but when I searched the area, I couldn't find it anywhere. Maybe that screenshot was taken earlier, and the dolphin is gone now. I mean, the dolphin must have swum off into the sunset, into the great wide ocean. That dumbass dolphin just swam away and stole my content. Alright, but let's assume that all of us, you, me, and everyone watching this video, are just collectively hallucinating, and we all saw that dolphin. So, we're in this together now. It's not just on me. Let's officially add a new entry to our Red Book, the shark and the dolphin. The next map is X36, although it's not actually X36, but XSB with some Russian or Ukrainian character. After a bit of research, I figured out it refers to the Hovrinsky Abandoned Hospital. Here's an interesting fact. A few years ago, this place attracted a lot of attention. Not the map, but the real-life hospital. There were tons of rumors about people disappearing there, or, you know, doing things that, well, let's say, terminate their biological existence. That kind of stuff. In 2018, the hospital was finally demolished and a residential complex was built in its place. Nowadays, it's doing pretty well, so the hospital doesn't exist anymore, but it's still present on the map, and honestly, I love this kind of memorialization. Let's not get sidetracked. Let's focus on DX36RF, the only map in Counter-Strike where you can find ducks. Not just one, but two different kinds. One gray with a green neck and another fully brown. What's interesting is that when I tried to figure out the breed of these ducks, I found a picture where the exact same two ducks with the same coloring were standing side by side. Funny, right? As you can see, they swim, but they're not just fish models with altered textures. Their movement is powered by the same mechanics that make the train on the overpass map move. The ducks are placed on a breakable object, meaning if you shoot at them, they shatter into pieces, just like those wooden crates you break on other maps. Still, they're a unique addition. Two rare specimens, actually. So let's add these little troublemakers to our collection and keep moving forward. Now we're moving on to a new swampy map. It was in the game for a while, but has probably been forgotten by newer players. On this map, aside from the obvious Shrek reference, you can find 3 crocodiles. A big one, a smaller one, and a tiny little croc. I wonder if they're a family or what? Since their habitat is in an area players can't access, there's no interaction with the crocodiles on this map. They don't react to gunfire, have no collision, and can't be trained. Like, come on, at least give me a speak command or something, damn it. The only thing they do is lie in the sun and occasionally open their mouths. But hey, there's room in our red book for everyone. The next contender for the rarest species comes from a different map. Let me know if you recognize it. Yes, it's a terrain inspired by Easter Island, created for the 2019 MapCore competition, though it never made it into the game. Still, it looks amazing. Right on the shoreline, next to the CT spawn point, you can see a bunch of funny crabs scuttling around on the sand. What's interesting is that these crabs are actually fish with a different model, only now they're on land instead of in the water. For those who don't know, to add a fish to a map, you don't even need water. They can just float in the air, though it would look pretty dumb. On this map though, they're proper crabs, not fish, and it actually looks great. With all these additions, our red book collection is starting to look like a pretty awesome zoo. Speaking of zoos, it's pretty ironic because for a while there was a map in CS called Zoo, but there weren't any animals on it. You could only see some nice fish and even more fish, but no actual animals, just their sounds. Funny, right? Imagine how many animals I could have had for this video, but nope, Valve doesn't give a fuck about me. Now we're moving into CSGO, where there's an entire collection of maps with the 2055 tag. If you don't know what that's about, each of these maps is styled as abandoned locations from the future. They're full of ruined buildings, fallen trees, and moss-covered walls. The whole vibe is very post-apocalyptic. It's kind of funny how people's artistic visions of the future are usually so dark, as if our civilization is going to collapse in the next 30 years, which, in my opinion, makes no sense. But anyway, back to the point. On the Overpass 2055 map, if you exit the bathrooms, you can spot 2 lions sitting at the top of a structure. They don't react to players, and if you go past the monster tunnel, you'll see crocodiles swimming in the dirty water. Both the lions and the crocodiles are completely indifferent to anything a player does. I can shoot at them, toss grenades, or even Molotov them, or get as close as possible. Literally nothing happens. But at least they move, so they get a pass and a spot in the list. Sticking to the post-apocalyptic 2055 maps, on Aztec 2055, to the left of the dock, just before the stairs, you can spot a puma. It looks like it can't jump over the fence and just stands there, looking around. Just like the lions and crocodiles, the puma doesn't react to the player's presence. Adding this one to the list, and trust me, keep watching, because the animals are only going to get more interesting as we go. Earlier, I mentioned that birds first appeared in the Counter-Strike universe in Counter-Strike Source. Holy shit, I'm sorry for that mistake. I was wrong. Let's correct that and dive into some official content. Map the Survivor. Right here, between 2 rocks, in the spot where you can fall off the bridge, there's an eagle flying around. It doesn't have hitboxes, doesn't react to gunfire, but hey, it's a bird. Back then, this was a big deal, and people on themed forums were writing detailed analyses about how the eagle worked. Folks were brainstorming theories and other crap, but the truth is simple. The mechanism is basic as hell. It runs on the same logic as the train on Overpass. They just set its path to move in a figure-8 pattern. And that's the big secret. But what matters to us is that this guy is there, so he gets a spot on the list. On the map train, in this spot right here, there's a sad, hungry dog sitting next to an empty bowl. Poor guy. It really feels like someone should help him. I can't stand seeing a pupper so down. And just when I start reflecting on how cruel this world is, I realize there's hope. With a simple click, the sad doggo transforms into a happy one. So, happy doggo, welcome to the list of CS animals. In Counter-Strike 2 on the map Abstract, if you manage to fly out of the playable area to this forest over here, you can spot a toucan perched on a rock. This is a prime example of how not to do things. The toucan itself is beautiful, but it just stands there, completely still. It doesn't look like a living creature at all, more like some random decoration you could buy at IKEA for $5. I was really disappointed that it doesn't do anything, but hey, an animal's an animal, so it gets a spot on the list. Usually Valve hides these kinds of elements, but here, nah, they just plopped a toucan statue in plain sight, and you can even see it from here. Classic. Sometimes Valve can do something right. They're kind of like 90% of my audience. Ambitious, capable, but too damn lazy to actually try. And yeah, I'm guilty of that too, so no judgment. A perfect example of this is the map Albatross in Counter-Strike Source. Aside from a drivable speedboat that lets you actually cruise around the sea, there are a few sharks at the edge of the map. Unlike the sharks on Dayport, which I already mentioned, these ones are way more aggressive. They'll straight up kill you if you get too close. Interestingly, you can't actually see the sharks, just their fins. But here's where it gets fun. If you use a console command to turn off the water, you'll see that all the sharks have the word Pingo written on them. It looks like some weird glitch, but it's actually intentional. Pingo is the nickname of the map creator. Full name Pingo Tinto. Honestly, not a bad way to immortalize yourself in a game, and now I'm immortalizing him on my list. Who remembers the map to Rotterdam? It holds the status of an official CS map because Valve added it at one point, though hardly anyone knows about it. That's because it was introduced way back in CS 1.1, but in later versions, de Rotterdam was removed. This means most players in CS 1.6 never even heard of it, and definitely had no idea it featured seagulls. These seagulls had funny animations and behaved similarly to to the chickens on the Italy map, except there were way more of them on Rotterdam. Plus, they were genuinely adorable. I don't know what kind of magic was at play, but all the animals in the original Counter-Strike have this cute, charming vibe. In contrast, the animals in the latest CS, like the chickens, are just looking into their eyes gives me a weird sense of unease, like something's just off. Anyway, seagulls, welcome to the list, thanks. Now we're on the map, Lazy, and here we have my favorite animals so far, although we'll see what comes next. But seriously, look at these fish. There are two versions of this map, one in the hostage rescue mode and another in the bomb defusal mode. What's interesting is that in the hostage version, all the fountains are empty, but in the bomb version, each water tank has two fish swimming around. The idea of having fish in a fountain was only brought to life in Counter-Strike Source, but imagine they came up with this concept ages ago. And here's the best part, you could even kill the fish. That's why they're my favorites so far, and they're officially making it onto the list. Welcome, little fishies. On the Palace map in CS2, you can encounter 3 new animals. First, we've got pigeons, literally everywhere. It's worth noting that these pigeons were created by the map's author because the official pigeons, like the ones on Train in CSGO, look, well, kind of weird, like they'd been whacked in the head and squished under someone's boot. The pigeons on Palace, though, look way more natural, and one of them even lays golden eggs if you ask it nicely. So this pigeon gets a spot on the list. Next up, we've got a rat. While doing the egg mission, if you lift a box, a rat scurries away from you. And finally, there's a cat chilling and napping. If you hit it, it bolts like crazy. Stick around though, because it turns out rats have a much richer history in CS than you might think. And honestly, that part got me super hyped. The next animal can be found on the Lies map in CS2. This map has work in progress status, meaning many areas are still in very early development. However, some sections are already quite detailed, suggesting the map's setting is something like an aquarium. You'll find information boards about penguins, posters featuring sharks and dolphins, and if you turn on NoClip and go under the map, you will find a model of a whale made out of primitive shapes. It's immediately clear that it's supposed to be a whale, but its presence on the map is a bit of a mystery, and the model is far from finished. So why am I mentioning it? Because a similar situation occurred with the Anubis map in its early versions. Near the CT spawn, there used to be a giant fish, a scaled up version of the fish from Militia. Although the fish was stationary, the map files included interactions tied to it, as well as to a statue that appeared when players got too close. But after an update, the fish was simply removed. When Anubis was reintroduced with CS2, it came without any of those mysterious elements. New players who started with CS2 probably have no idea that something strange and intriguing was once planned for Anubis. Now we have the Lies map, and without insight into the developers' plans, we don't know whether the whale concept will be expanded or scrapped, just like the fish on Anubis. That's why I've decided to show you the whale now. Who knows what might come of it. Returning to the rat trivia, let's take a look at the map AS Forest, which was part of the official map pool for a while, but didn't make it to CS 1.6. This map was designed for some strange mode and has 2 particularly interesting Easter eggs. First, on the roof of one of the houses, you could find a live rat performing the same animation over and over. Upon death, it would make a sound borrowed from one of the creatures in Half-Life, a hilarious little detail. The only rat on the map, not even close. On AS Forest, you could also find 9 other rats, seemingly holding something like a church service, complete with singing hymns in honor of the map creator. The sound that accompanies this rat choir is labeled rat chant in the game files. Here's how it sounds in isolation. The first time I heard this sound, I felt an odd wave of nostalgia but couldn't figure out why. Then it hit me. In the early versions of Stalker, some old builds used sound effects from Counter-Strike. Over time, the developers replaced weapon sounds with their own, but some elements from CS 1.6, like the full scream sound, remained. Interestingly, the rat chant sound was removed from the final version of Stalker, though the sound files still exist and are restored in many mods for the game. So, if you ever thought Stalker borrowed sounds from CS, you were absolutely right. And now, back to the main topic. Back to birds. On this random map, there's a tree because, well, birds mostly hang out on trees, and on one of its branches, there's a bird. And not just any bird. If you come closer, you can spot a black crow. You can't touch it, it's purely decorative, but because the crow moves, it adds life to the map's atmosphere and fits perfectly into my list. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, drop a comment, hit that subscribe button, and check out my other videos.